He bought me for $1. The coin clinked on the table. I kept my mouth shut. Etta Marsh stood on the courthouse steps with her hands crossed at the wrists, more habit than restraint. Wind pushed dust against her boots, and the faces in the crowd did not blink. Sheriff Daly read the notice again. Indenture transferred. Household service. Consideration, $1. The banker, Calder Finch, folded the paper into his vest and met the sheriff's eyes. All legal, he said. No one argued. Etta's shawl was thin. She kept her gaze on the cedar tree by the hitching rail to steady herself. Beside the rail, a cradle she had carved for a neighbor's baby sat wrapped in burlap. She had brought it hoping to hand it over after the hearing. Now it looked out of place, small and quiet. A rider pushed through the crowd. Jonah Hale, hat low, trail dust on his coat, stopped at the bottom step. His chest lifted once hard. He had been up in the breaks moving cattle when word reached him that the note on Etta's wages had been called early, that her brother's gambling debt had been folded into it, and that Finch meant to make an example. Jonah's palm pressed the banister. "What's your price?" he asked. Finch's mouth twitched. "The price was $1, Mr. Hale. You're late." The crowd shifted. Etta did not look at Jonah, but she knew where he stood from the heat in her face. She had scrubbed his ranch floor the winter his wife died, sat by the hearth with a silent pot until he came in from the cold and thawed his hands over the flame. They had never spoken much. He had paid on time, left wood by her door in a bad storm. Sheriff Daly cleared his throat. "Move along." Finch stepped close enough for Etta to smell his cologne, something sharp. "Midnight," he said, quiet, for her only. "My house. Try to run, and I put your brother in irons." Etta lifted her chin and looked at Jonah at last. His jaw was tight, eyes set. He saw the cradle at her feet and the shawl at her shoulders, and his right hand opened and closed on the rail. Finch turned, pocketed the bill of sale, and started down the steps. Etta kept her mouth shut. The wind pushed again. Jonah said one word, not loud. "Name." Etta said it for him, steady. "Calder Finch." Finch stopped and smiled without teeth. The crowd went quiet. What would Jonah pay, and how fast? Jonah Hale walked into Finch's bank with a satchel and a straight back. The teller glanced at the satchel, then at Finch's glass office. Finch did not invite Jonah to sit. He closed the office door. "You want to buy a contract already transferred," Finch said. "You're asking me to undo a public sale." "I'll pay what it takes," Jonah said. Finch looked at the satchel. "How much cattle you moved this week?" "All of it," Jonah said. "You know that." Finch's smile stayed small. "Not enough. I'll want your lower pasture by the river. Water rights with it." Jonah's jaw worked once. "You don't need water. You need to hurt people so they stop asking you for fair terms." Finch's eyes warmed at the edges, as if at an old joke. "I need whatever keeps my interests in order. Noon tomorrow. Deed on my desk. Or I send her brother to the territorial court and let strangers decide his time." He leaned back. "And Jonah, sheriff says you went to the courthouse steps ready to start trouble." "Don't!" Jonah left without answering. Outside, snow threatened but did not fall. He crossed the street to the mercantile. Mrs. Wilkes handed him a brown-wrapped bundle. "You're late," she said softly. Inside was a simple band he had asked the blacksmith to let him finish with his own knife. A thin carved ring, plain, oak leaf scored. He had not told anyone why. He rode to Etta's cabin before dark. It was already half emptied. 2 of Finch's men had pulled her trunk into the yard, broken the hinge, and left it open. Her shawl was gone. The cradle sat on the porch where she had left it that morning, unclaimed. Jonah put it across his saddle like a person and tied it with care. At dusk, he went to Sheriff Daly's office. "You stood there and let him buy a woman for a coin," Jonah said. The sheriff looked older than he had that morning. "It was paper, Jonah. You know the law. She signed an indenture to cover wages when her brother ran. He wrapped the debt around it. I can't fix it with a badge." "Judge Kearns can," Jonah said. "Kearns won't cross Finch unless you put something heavy on the other end of the table." Jonah set the satchel down. "What if the pasture isn't enough?" Daly rubbed his eyes. "You can't sell your whole life for one person." Jonah looked at the cradle leaning against the wall. "Watch me." At midnight, lamps lit on the hill where Finch lived. The door opened. Did Etta step through it, or wait for a knock that didn't come? Finch's house was quiet in the way of moneyed rooms, thick carpet, doors that shut without sound. Etta stood by a window and kept her hands folded so they would not shake. The maid's room was small and clean. A dress hung on a peg that was not hers. A necklace lay on the table. A thin leather cord with one wooden bead from her mother. She put it on and tucked it under the collar. Finch brought ledgers after supper and set them on the kitchen table. "You read?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Good," he said. "You'll copy figures at night until you sleep. You'll scrub at dawn. You'll speak when I ask. Your brother owes me 3 months at the quarry. You will keep him out of chains by doing as I say." He leaned on his hands. "You think Mr. Hale will save you? He won't. He needs what he owns more than he needs you." Etta looked him in the face. "He needs clean floors and a coffee pot that stays hot." Finch laughed. "You're stubborn." She worked until the clock reached 11. When the house went still, she sat on the edge of the narrow bed and pressed her thumb to the wooden bead. Her brother had said the cards would turn, and they never did. He had taken the money she put aside from winter scrubbing, lost it, and brought her the paper to sign. "Just until spring," he had said. Spring had come and gone. A knock sounded near midnight. Finch opened the back door himself. Jonah stood in the dark, glove in his hat brim, snow starting to spit. Finch did not block the doorway. He let the cold in to make a point. "You have my price?" Finch asked. "Not yet," Jonah said. "But I have this." He held out the carved ring. "For her to keep until I do. A receipt, if you want to call it that." Finch considered the small circle of metal and scratched oak lines. "That is not a receipt." "It's a promise," Jonah said. Finch took it, turned it once, and set it on the table out of her reach. "Promises don't pay debts. Dawn train tomorrow. I'm sending her to my sister in Abilene to keep her from distractions." Jonah looked at Etta. He said nothing. She nodded once. He stepped back into the dark. Finch closed the door. The ring stayed on the table. Etta did not touch it. She lay down wearing her boots and watched the doorknob. Would Jonah arrive at the depot with enough to end it? Or would she leave the town behind before sunup? Snow held off. The depot platform smelled of coal and cold iron. Etta kept her eyes on the horizon. Finch stood near the ticket window with a valise and the bill of sale folded small in his glove. Sheriff Daly was there too, jaw tight, hands in his coat. Judge Kearns came late, coat collar up, as if he had taken a wrong street and wanted it not to matter. Jonah walked along the tracks without hurry, a single sheet of paper in his hand and another satchel at his side. He set the satchel down in front of Finch and opened it. Deeds, receipts from cattle buyers, a signed transfer on the lower pasture, a separate document for water rights. He did not look at the papers as he laid them out. He knew each line. Finch's eyes shone. "All this for a scrub woman," he said. Daly flinched. Jonah didn't. "All this for her freedom." Judge Kearns cleared his throat. "If both parties agree, the court can record satisfaction of indenture and issue release." Finch tapped the water rights deed. "And this stays mine either way." Jonah nodded. "If she walks away clean, it does." Finch smiled. "Then read it into the record, Judge." Kearns put on his spectacles and spoke slow. "Indenture satisfied. Debt extinguished. Release of person known as Etta Marsh from service as of this day." He lifted his eyes. "You understand, Miss Marsh? You owe this man nothing from here." Etta's mouth felt strange when she said, "I understand." Finch slid the deeds into his case. "Pleasure doing business." Jonah lifted a second paper. "One more," he said. "Transfer of my remaining stock and equipment into a trust in the name of Etta Marsh, to be released only if Finch or his men come within 50 yards of her house or person without invitation. Sheriff is trustee, judge witnesses." Finch's smile thinned. "You can't bind me to a distance with cattle." "You can try," Jonah said, "to buy another paper at another table. But if you step wrong here, the herd walks to the mission, and the town sees you starve men out of spite. Your choice." Daly took the paper. "I'll hold it," he said. "And I'll hold you to it, Calder." For a long second, no one breathed. A freight whistle sounded down the line. Finch shut his case. "Enjoy your fine principles," he said to Jonah. "I'll enjoy my river." He turned and walked away. The platform noise came back slow. Jonah picked up the carved ring from his pocket. Another one, finished the night before, and set it in Eda's palm. "Where do you go now?" Daly asked. Jonah looked at the empty satchel, then at Eda. He said nothing. Eda closed her fingers over the ring. "With me," she said. "But where would that be with no pasture, no herd, and winter starting at the edge of town?" They took the road behind the livery to keep eyes off them. Eda's cabin door hung crooked, half the roof tar paper peeled back by wind. Inside, the stove was cold. Jonah lifted the cedar cradle from where he had leaned it and set it near the hearth. He stacked kindling without a word. When the flame caught, the room looked smaller and alive. Eda draped her old shawl over a chair back. She unwrapped bread Mrs. Wilkes had pushed into her hands at the depot and set 2 cups on the table. Their silence was not the silence from the morning on the steps. This one held room. "I can sew for the mercantile in winter," Eda said. "Scrub for the church. Take in washing," Jonah nodded once. "I can work fence for Buckner. I can sleep in the bunkhouse." "You'll sleep here if you want to," she said. "On the floor by the stove if that keeps tongues down for a time." He looked at the floor, then at the cradle. "You ever think on leaving this town?" "Every week," she said. "And every week someone knocks and needs hot coffee or a baby held. The road keeps not moving." He took the ring from her hand, turned it, and set it back. "I don't have anything to give you but work and a good back." "You have hands that don't drop a thing once they pick it up," she said. "You have quiet. That's worth more than paper." A rap sounded on the door. Sheriff Daly stood there with his hat in both hands. "Judge filed it," he said. "It's done." And Finch got a telegram. "Inspectors from the territory are asking about his quarry books. Might be he travels for a while." "Who sent for them?" Eda asked. Daly glanced at Jonah's empty shelves. "Folks talk when they see a man trade land for a person. Sometimes they write letters." After he left, Eda lifted the cradle and set it closer to the heat. "I promised Mrs. Carter I'd keep this until her baby's fever broke," she said. "It broke this morning. I'll carry it over when the wind drops." Jonah sat on the floor by the stove like a boy after chores. She sat beside him. Their shoulders touched. The room made a small sound as wood settled in the heat. "I want to do this right," Jonah said. "Slow." "Slow is fine," Eda said. "It holds." He reached for her hand. They watched the fire move. Outside, snow started at last, soft on the roof. The town would talk. Work would be hard. They would count coins and stretch coffee and mend what the wind took. Eda listened to the quiet and felt it shift from weight to comfort. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start again." And for once, tomorrow felt possible.